Prayer will be offered by Chaplain Kibben.
Would you pray with me? Loving God, abide with us from this moment of prayer and remain with us all the day long. With you beside us, may we live into the righteousness, into the integrity that we cannot obtain on our own. Align our hearts with your heart, so that any thought that comes to our minds, every word that leaves our mouths, every sight we see or look we give would reflect your divine goodness and reveal your steadfast love for each and every person we encounter. As we close out the end of this long and taxing week, may what's left of our limited strength be reinforced with your infinite strength. Whatever shred of patience we have left be infused with your unfailing patience with us. And whatever ounce of compassion we can muster be magnified by your compassionate and steadfast love for us and for all people. Abide in us, and may we abide in you. For without you, the fruit of our labor is worth nothing. But in you, may we bear the fruit of your Holy Spirit. In your merciful name we pray. Amen.
Amen. The chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Gottheimer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The chair will entertain up to 5 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, for the first time in their 63-year history, I'm proud to say that after defeating the Arizona Diamondbacks in Game 5, the Texas Rangers are World Series champions. I have the great honor to represent the Rangers in Texas' 25th Congressional District. I'm tremendously proud of this team, who not only won their first World Series, but won a record-setting 11 straight postseason road games. Needless to say, this is a historic moment for Texas and Arlington, and it could not have been done without manager Bruce Bochy, Series MVP Corey Seager, all the players and staff who left everything on the field, and especially team owners Ray Davis, Neil Liebman, and general manager Chris Young. And most importantly, all the fans, the best in the nation, who showed up to every game decked out in their Ranger red, their Ranger white, and their Ranger blue to cheer and support the Texas Rangers. I'm proud to say the Rangers went and took it. Again, to the staff and players, congratulations. Enjoy the well-deserved celebrations. We look forward to opening day in 2024. Go Rangers and look fastball. In God we trust. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the passing of the bipartisan Hamas International Financing Prevention Act in the House of Representatives. I helped introduce this bipartisan legislation with Representative Brian Mast and helped lead it to overwhelmingly pass the House 363 to 46. This legislation imposes sanctions on foreign persons, agencies, and governments that assist terrorist organizations, including Iranian-backed Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other affiliates. On October 7th, the world watched Hamas terrorists invade Israel and brutally kidnap, behead, torture, rape, burn, and murder innocent babies, children, women, and the elderly, including dozens of Americans. This unprovoked war is underscored why we'll always stand with Israel and support our partner's right to defend herself from those who seek her destruction. This bipartisan legislation will ensure we isolate and punish these radical terrorist groups by cutting off their financial resources at the moment our ally in the Middle East needs it most. We must do everything we can to get every hostage home, including all Americans, help our ally Israel defend herself and crush the terrorists, and provide much-needed humanitarian aid to innocent Palestinian civilians being used by Hamas as human shields. Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues in the Senate to immediately pass the bipartisan Hamas International Financing Prevention Act.
Gentleman's
Thank you,
time
and I
has
yield
expired.
back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in remembrance of Tom Durden, who passed away at the age of 66. Durden was a famous district attorney for the Atlantic Judicial Circuit. In 1984, 2 years after earning a law degree from Mercer University, he joined the DA's office as an assistant prosecutor until he was elected DA in 1998. He was a true public servant to the state of Georgia for almost 40 years and led the DA's office for 24 years before retiring in 2022. During his career, Tom Durden worked on hundreds of criminal cases in the Atlantic Circuit, which includes 6 southeast Georgia counties outside Savannah. He was best known for working on the Tomato Patch murder case and the 2020 Ahmaud Arbery murder. Durden was a hard-working, determined, and endearing person with many great qualities. He also had artistic talents such as singing, playing guitar, and piano. Durden will be remembered by many for being a good person and for his talents in and outside of the courtroom. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Minnesota seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much. On October 23, 1983, the United States of America suffered an unspeakable loss. 220 Marines, 18 Navy sailors, and 3 Army soldiers were killed in a horrific act of violence in the Marine barracks at the Beirut airport. My heart is with every American grieving the loss of a loved one. Each of those 241 Americans represents the best of our country, brave, selfless, and dedicated. We must recommit ourselves to working to defend democracy at home and around the world. That's how we rightfully honor the legacy of the 241 heroes we lost that day. And that's what we owe all of the service members, family members, and loved ones whose lives were changed forever those 40 years ago. Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to recognize the 50th anniversary of the Garth Newell Music Center, which is in the heart of Virginia's Allegheny Mountains. Garth Newell, the estate of celebrated artists and accomplished musicians, Christine and William Sargent Kendall, has been a home to the fine and performing arts since 1924. In 1973, with the help of Rose String Quartet members Luca and Arlene DeCecco, Ms. Kendall established the Garth Newell Music Center. When Ms. Kendall passed in 1981, her vision lived on through the leadership of the DeCeccos and visiting artists. Today, the Music Center offers world-class performances, including the Garth Newell Piano Quartet and education programs. It's received several recognitions for its contributions to the cultural life of the Allegheny Highlands, such as the Chamber Music America's Acclaim Award. And Garth Newell is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Congratulations again to the Garth Newell Music Center on its 50th anniversary. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to acknowledge the service of one of the most effective staffers this chamber has ever known, Elizabeth Austin McKenzie. As staff director of the Health Subcommittee, she shepherded many of the most significant achievements of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs over the last 6 years. Quiet and unassuming, Elizabeth has one of the sharpest minds I've worked with. She has spent the majority of her professional life advocating for this nation's veterans with an unflappable determination to doing right by them. She has always advised me with clear-eyed perspective and guided her staff with an endless capacity for kindness and a good laugh. In 2020, when many offices struggled to find ways to work effectively from home, Elizabeth ensured the Health Subcommittee didn't miss a beat. It is safe to say that no congressional staffer did more for veterans in 2020 than Elizabeth McKenzie. This landmark education, the Save Lives Act, which vaccinated tens of thousands of veterans, their spouses, and caregivers, was made possible by her determination. We are saddened to lose this brilliant, seemingly tireless advocate to the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, but I know she will continue to do great things for veterans and this country. Thank you, and I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise next in remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to congratulate Jeremy Tarbett, an automotive teacher in my district, who was awarded the Harbor Freight Tools for Schools Prize for Teaching Excellence. Mr. Tarbett has dedicated almost a decade of his life to teaching at his alma mater, Canyon del Oro High School in Arizona's 6th District, just a few miles away from my home. For the past 3 years, Mr. Tarbett has worked with Skills USA, a technical student organization where he encourages his students to showcase their skills by participating in competitions. Throughout this year, Mr. Tarbett offers 3 classic cars for restoration projects, giving his students the opportunity to see firsthand their education at work. This award, given to only 25 teachers every year, is a testament to his dedication to his students. I have no doubt that he will continue to shape the future of our students for years to come. Congratulations again, Jeremy, on receiving this well-received distinction. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition? The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, I cast a no vote for a highly partisan supplemental appropriation bill providing security aid to Israel. Let me be clear. I stand with Israel. Israel isn't just any ally. It's a cornerstone of democracy in one of the most volatile regions in the world. Security assistance should never be tethered to a hyper-partisan domestic financial concession. The offset in this bill, slashing IRS staff, actually adds to the deficit and would allow billionaires to get away with cheating on their taxes. In matters of foreign policy, especially with crucial allies like Israel, we must rise above partisan politics. When a bipartisan supplemental appropriation bill containing aid for Israel comes back from the Senate without poison pills, I'll wholeheartedly support it. That's the clear path forward here, and the best way to support our friend and ally Israel. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to point out that, once again, our water situation in California is extremely important to the whole country for our food supply. These products you see here, many crops that are grown in California supply 90 to 99% of what Americans consume. Otherwise, they would be imported. So why is that important? Because if our water supply in California isn't allowed to go to agriculture, instead more and more environmental water, more and more water just allowed to flow down the streams without being captured in water storage, we don't get these crops. We don't have an economy, and the land turns into something much less productive. So what we need is to continue to focus on saving water in California and allowing it to flow to agriculture. More water storage projects and updating the 1960s, 1970s manuals that guide how government saves water. Yes, we had an amazing amount of water last year, but still, 2 of our large reservoirs only reached 50% and 80% full, even with all that. And so water management is extremely important when we manage it for people. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Suffering epidemic that's happening across this country and devastating our communities and tearing families apart. Last week, a lone gunman walked into a bowling alley and opened fire on children and parents who were there for a children's bowling league. He got into his car, drove to a nearby restaurant, and senselessly murdered 8 more. This is now a common occurrence in America, and it needs to stop. Now, yesterday, I proudly introduced the AMMO Act with Senator Elizabeth Warren. Our country has more guns on the street than people. And if we are truly to solve the gun violence epidemic, we must focus on not just weapons, but also on ammunition. That means addressing how we license, sell, and regulate ammo. In many parts of the country, it is easier to buy ammunition than it is to register to vote. And in most of the country, you can walk into a convenience store or pharmacy and purchase as much ammunition as you want without ever showing any ID. The Ammo Act requires licensing to sell ammo, enacts background checks, cracks down on straw purchasing, and restricts bulk sales and institutes record data keeping across the country. The Ammo Act will save lives, and it's time to act. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Pursuant to House Resolution 838 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House in committee of the whole House on the Senate on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 4821. Will the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Smith, kindly take the chair?
The House is in the committee of the whole House on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 4821, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for the Department of the Interior, Environment, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2024, and for other purposes.
When the Committee of the Whole rose on the legislative day of Thursday, November 2nd, 2023, Amendment number 125, printed in Part A of House Report 118-261, offered by the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Rose, had been disposed of. It is now in order to consider Amendment number 126, printed in Part A of House Report 118-261. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 126, printed in Part A of House Report number 118-261, offered by Mr. Roy of Texas.
Pursuant to House Resolution 838, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Thank the chairman. The amendment that I'm offering here on the legislation we're considering would prohibit any of the funds in this appropriations bill from being used to carry out so-called environmental justice, quote unquote, activities. Now, this so-called environmental justice is nothing more in the end than a synthesis of divisive racial ideology and policies that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle like to promote with radical environmentalism. Basically, they're taking their radical environmental policies perpetuated the EPA and through Interior through this administration, doubling down on them, injecting divisive race policies, and now creating a larger problem for the American people. The entire ideology is based on the notion that federal environmental funding should be allocated based on immutable characteristics. So let's think about that for a minute. So not only do we need to destroy the American economy with radical environmental policies, but we need to inject divisive race policies into the middle of it. That's where we are. And the American people wonder, it's like they run around going to the gas station to get gasoline. They're trying to power their homes. They're wondering how we're having massive instability around the world. They wonder why China is on the rise. They wonder why Iran is able to enrich itself selling oil to China. They wonder why they can't afford to live their own lives while inflation is destroying their well-being. And now we're injecting race into the middle of it all. Biden's so-called Justice 40 initiative directs 40% of federal clean energy and energy efficiency spending based on ethnicity, migrant status, and income status. I mean, you literally just can't make this absurdity up. Here are some of the examples. Quote, developing a roadmap to dismantle environmental racism in Brunswick, Georgia. The Ecology Action in Bloomington, Illinois, which, quote, seeks to identify and develop mitigation strategies for disproportionate climate impacts and increase tree equity. What in the hell is tree equity? Quote, supporting summer high school environmental internships in Milwaukee, Wisconsin to build climate resilience and connect mainly young people of color to life skills and environmental sector career pathways. However, a recent study conducted by President Obama's former energy secretary found on average solar workers make $12,000 a year less than oil and gas workers. Look, the fact of the matter is we're destroying the American economy, chasing
the climate agenda, which my colleagues on the other side of the aisle fully acknowledge and admit is being driven by the climate agenda, and that the American people must suffer higher inflation, higher costs, and inability to afford their own homes, their own cars, go about their own jobs, their own way of life, in order to pursue an agenda that everyone acknowledges that even if we do everything my colleagues on the other side of the aisle say we would do, wouldn't dent CO2 production relative to what's happening in China and India and countries around the world. I reserve.
And reserves. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Maine seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I seek claim time in opposition to this amendment.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you so much. In recent years, Democrats have made historic investments in environmental justice, and the EPA has already put those dollars to good use. I think it's unfortunate that my colleagues across the aisle continue to attack good government programs. Environmental justice, just to explain this, ensures that all Americans receive the same degree of protection from environmental and health hazards. It is particularly important in rural communities, like the one I represent and like the one I imagine my colleague represents. Many of these rural communities are in the very districts my colleagues across the aisle are representing. Rural communities and low-income communities have long been targeted by corporations, regulatory agencies, and local planning and zoning boards when siting polluting facilities. Let me just give you a list of the kinds of things we're talking about here. Landfills, waste transfer stations, incinerators, garbage dumps, diesel bus and truck garages, auto body shops, smokestack industry, industrial hog and chicken processors, oil refineries, chemical manufacturers, and radioactive waste storage areas. Because of this, these communities typically have lower property values, higher health disparities, and shorter lifespans. We're not talking about something trivial here, people. We are talking about serious concerns about your health, the length of your life, and what your property is worth. So why would my colleagues try to defund any effort to improve the lives of people in rural and low-income communities? I'm sorry, but it's just another attempt to implement an extreme agenda, to attack minority groups at all costs, and to return the U.S. to a time when environmental discrimination was the norm. I urge my colleagues to support our rural and low-income communities by rejecting this amendment, and I reserve.
And reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank the chairman. I mean, the fact is, I've not heard one constituent, not one constituent, among the 750,000 people that I represent, come up to me and say, you know what I need, Congressman Roy? I need environmental justice funding. Just please. They call into my office, and they're just begging for environmental justice funding. Has anybody had a constituent do that? Like call up and say, will you please solve the world's problems with environmental justice funding? No. No, but you know what I have had? I've had phone calls to my office saying I can't afford gas. I can't afford electricity. I've had calls from workers from a refinery in my district saying that they're going to drive us out of business and I don't know what I'm going to do. And that is all a direct result of a radical agenda by Democrats in the White House, the administration, my colleagues across the other side of the aisle in this chamber, the other chamber, who are more interested in advancing a radical agenda than standing up for American citizens who simply want to live their lives. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Maine is recognized.
I reserve.
Reserves. Gentleman from Texas.
Prayer to close.
Gentleman is recognized.
This amendment is a straightforward amendment. It would just do what the American people want us to do, which is just focus on our job here in this chamber to deliver our constitutional duties and nothing more, and not divide us by race while also destroying the American economy with radical environmentalism. I yield back.
Gentlewoman from Maine is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How much time do I have?
He has 3 minutes remaining.
Thank you so much. My colleague on the other side of the aisle said no one ever calls his office and talks about environmental justice. I understand. There's all kinds of words we use in Congress that people rarely talk to us about. They don't talk to us about many of the procedures that we have on the floor, all kinds of things that we don't do. But you do have people call your office who say, you know what, I don't want that chemical manufacturer sited next to my house. I'm worried about that hog farm that's coming down the road from me. I'm worried about the garbage dump. I'm worried about the health impacts that my family is experiencing because of where we live. Now, maybe that didn't happen in your district. I'll admit everything doesn't happen in all of our districts, but there are certainly districts across the country where people are experiencing adverse health impacts. They're experiencing loss of property values because things have been sited in their neighborhood. Now, maybe my colleague, like so many times here in Congress, just doesn't like the words, and I understand. I have heard the terms environmental justice so many times over the last couple of days, as if it is some kind of discriminatory term, or as if it is some kind of term that they just can't get out of their mouth without feeling angry. We can call it anything we want. We can call it poor siting of messy places. We can call it anything you want. But to make sure that all Americans get a fair deal, that people don't have adverse health impacts, I'm willing to change that. Just like we can't seem to say climate change without people getting upset. I'm happy to, every time we have to discuss this, just say extreme weather. Okay? It's extreme weather. It's too much melting. It's too much heat. It's too much things that aren't supposed to happen going wrong. The hottest summer on record. Melting of the polar ice cap. People who live in communities like mine experiencing the greatest heat in the ocean of any oceans on Earth. These are things that are impacting all of us, and I'll call it whatever you like. But we got to do something about it. We got to have equity here, and we have to make sure it is a fair deal for everybody. Now, I heard you didn't like the term tree equity, and I get it. It's one of those things that you just think, like, what are we talking about now? But in fact, urban areas have changed. I'm so fortunate. I live in the most forested state in the nation. I don't know what it's like where you live. You told me you live on the top of a hill, so maybe you got some trees up there. But it makes a huge difference. And if you're in a part of a city that has trees, if your playgrounds are paved and black and hot in the summer, or if your playgrounds have some trees and some shade and some cover so kids can go out and play. We're just talking about kids being able to play on a playground, having a decent life. And so when we're talking about making sure we plant trees, which often my colleagues on the other side of the aisle say is a really good idea, we go ahead and believe we should plant more trees. So let's not just get caught up in the terminology. I think there's a lot we could work on together here and that we believe in together. But this amendment to disregard all funding for environmental justice, tell me what you want to call it, but that's just not appropriate. That's not how we should be funding our environmental laws. That's not how we should be dealing with climate change. I oppose this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is
Mr. Chair, I request a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas will be postponed. It is now in order to consider amendment number 127, printed in Part A of House Report 118-261. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 127, printed in Part A of House Report number 118-261, offered by Mr. Roy of Texas.
Pursuant to House Resolution 838, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
I thank the chairman. Before I talk about this amendment, the gentlelady referred to the importance of having trees, and no one disagrees with that. I mean, yeah, I live in the Texas Hill Country where live oaks are something we try to figure out how to protect, especially, for example, when you have an ice storm earlier this year, and I don't know, you're out figuring out a way to go save your trees by cutting limbs and figuring out how to preserve the beauty that God gave us. Nobody disagrees with that. But the idea that a core responsibility of the federal government is tree equity is absurd. Right? I mean, the state of Texas is the 8th largest economy in the world. We're perfectly capable of figuring out how to deal with trees. We don't have any money. We're $34 trillion in debt, $2 trillion a year in deficit spending, and we're talking about tree equity? What the hell are we doing? Like, that's the question here, right? Like, I love trees. I love live oak trees. Do everything I can to preserve and protect the environment in which I live, because you know what? This is a crazy idea. I live there. I actually like to fish. I like to live in clean air and clean water. I like to have an environment that's great to be in for my kids and my family. We had a Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act in Texas before the Environmental Protection Agency was even created here in this town. The fact of the matter is, we can do what we need to do to protect our communities without this place spending money we don't have to interfere with us. And yes, there are interstate issues we must deal with, and we can deal with those things. But the fact is, we can do these. This amendment that I'm offering prohibits any of the funding in the Interior Environmental Appropriations Bill from being used to carry out President Biden's executive orders on climate change. These executive orders direct the EPA to wage its regulatory war in the United States energy production and the internal combustion engine. The fact of the matter is, there are ambitious efforts to convert our entire fleet of vehicles to have 2/3 of new vehicles be electric vehicles by 2032. Now, that might sound good in a little focus group in some Ivy League, cabal in Boston. But the idea of what this is going to actually do to hardworking Americans is something we ought to actually flush out for the American people when the average EV is $16,000 more than a vehicle with an internal combustion engine. Maybe we should talk about the racial justice issues of cobalt miners around the world who are being exploited in the Congo so that we can empower China by buying all of their batteries rather than producing American oil and gas. I mean, people think that all this stuff is an accident of what we're seeing unfold in the Middle East and what we're seeing unfold in Ukraine, while our prices are going up and while our national security strength is going down because we're pursuing this radical agenda. These things are all connected. So yeah, we should not be funding these radical executive orders that are destroying the American way of life and making it virtually impossible for people to figure out how to live their lives, while we pursue unicorn energy theories that we're going to be able to somehow magically produce power without the use of reliable power. And Texas has tons of wind and solar. Great. But we also have a grid that is decreasingly reliable directly as a consequence of federal regulatory impact on our ability to manage our grid. That is wrong, and we shouldn't do it, and we shouldn't be funding continuation of it. I reserve.
Reserves. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Maine seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Claim time in opposition.
The gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you. So we're only 14 days away from a government shutdown. And instead of focusing on keeping the government open, we're working on a bill that's going nowhere. The draconian cuts that are proposed in this bill violate the agreement reached by former Speaker McCarthy and President Biden, and that were memorialized in statute in Public Law 118-5, the Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023. We would not be teetering on the brink of a government shutdown if my Republican colleagues had held up their end of the bargain. Now, we are here today to protect the welfare of the American public, and we cannot close our eyes to the impacts of climate change, such as the drought, flooding, severe storm, and wildfire events we are experiencing. As of October 10th, the United States has experienced 24 confirmed weather climate disaster events with losses exceeding $1 billion each. This is a new record. This amendment seeks to prohibit funding that will result in more resilient communities, mitigate the impacts of climate change, and protect our world for future generations. Not investing in strategies that minimize and prevent the acceleration of climate change, and instead paying billions in disaster relief shows my Republican colleagues are not thinking about what is best for the American taxpayer. Our economy, our health, our livelihoods, our food security, and quality of life all depend on healthy ecosystems. So I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment, focus instead on addressing climate change, making our nation stronger, and I reserve.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Yeah, the fact of the matter is, yes, this bill returns the funding to the ever-efficient model of effectiveness of the 2018 federal government. Yes, it does back up the funding levels. And frankly, we ought to be doing it for more of our agencies. And we are trying to take those steps forward. And I'll say that unapologetically. because the American people are sick and tired of the federal government spending money we don't have to fund agencies that are directly at war with their way of life. And that's the truth. That's why gasoline is $1 more than it was before Biden took office, despite the fact the president has completely dumped our strategic petroleum reserve in order to try to preserve political benefits for my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And that's just the simple truth. And everybody knows it. And yet we went around here ignoring the reality of what that means for the American people who are trying to get by every single day while the federal government is directly at odds with their ability to prosper, earn a living, pay their bills, pay for their energy, pay for schools,
time has expired.
Buy cars, and do what they need to do.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlewoman from Maine is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My colleague on the other side of the aisle has proposed this bill that would really slash and burn so many of the important programs that our president has implemented to tackle climate change. And why did he have to do that? I've been in Congress for about 15 years, and I'm very fortunate to have served that amount of time. But since I came here, I have been dealing with colleagues on the other side of the aisle who have denied that climate change existed, who have done everything they could to support the oil and gas industry, who have pushed back on any kind of legislation or funding or anything we could possibly do to deal with climate change. And 15 years later, we're in a very serious situation. Now, my colleague is proud of saying it's a simple truth. It's a simple truth this, it's a simple truth that. But let me tell you a simple truth. Our planet is warming. We had the hottest summer on record. Oceans are heating. The polar ice cap is melting. We are in a very serious state, and most scientists will say things are happening much faster than we ever anticipated. And here we are having a ridiculous debate about something that's not actually going to go anywhere, and a bill that's not going to really happen, with a party on the other side of the aisle that wants to cut everything we've already done in the last 2 years to support funding for climate change. This is our responsibility. Our children, our grandchildren, you can say, oh, well, we're just going to handle it in my small town, in my small state. Well, I'm just going to explain to you that the planet is warming as an entire entity. And yes, we have to deal with foreign countries, but we also have to make sure that our country is on the right track, that we are investing in renewable energy, that we're not putting our heads in the sand and just ignoring what's going on out there, that all of these things are critically important. And we have to stop digging in our heels on every single bill and denying that climate change is real and making all kinds of crazy arguments about, well, it's India's fault or China's fault or America can't do it. You know, we can do all these things. We can manufacture the batteries in this country. We can manufacture the solar panels in this country. That's much of what we've done in the last bills, the infrastructure bill, the IRA, investing in our country, investing in American manufacturing so that this can be homegrown American energy. Every time you talk about gas prices, you refuse to acknowledge that we're trying to end our dependence on gas and oil. We're trying to make sure we are an energy independent nation. And yes, that takes a transition. But at this moment in time, we got to make those investments in the future. I've never seen a party so unwilling to invest in our economic future, to acknowledge what's actually happening in our daily lives and in our families' daily lives. And if you really listen to your constituents or took the calls or listen to what people are saying about their worries about the future, one of their greatest worries is what are we going to do about the warming planet? What are we going to do about the number of days when kids can't go outside and play because it's too hot? What are we going to do about making sure we're looking at our future together? That is not what you're doing here. You're just denying that climate change exists. You're denying that we have real work ahead of us and that we ought to be doing it together. So once again, I oppose this horrible amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Out of time. Yield back.
Time has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.
Request a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas will be postponed. It is now in order to consider amendment number 128, printed in Part A of House Report 118-261. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 128, printed in Part A of House Report number 118-261, offered by Mr. Swikert of Arizona.
Pursuant to House Resolution 838, the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Schweikert, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, this is actually an amendment that is brutal. It's not a happy place to go, but I'm trying to be intellectually honest here. Every dime we vote on as members of Congress is now borrowed. Remember, last fiscal year we borrowed 8.4% of GDP. Every dime of military is borrowed. Every dime of non-defense discretionary, which is functionally what we're going over right now, and what, $300–400 billion of function, let's call it Medicare. So for my brothers and sisters on the left, who often the solution is, well, raise revenues. Okay, so we're engaged in this insanity right now where we're borrowing money to send it to entities that have their own taxing authority. And look, you know, I've been the treasurer of the 4th biggest county in America. I managed the bank, I managed the tax collections, I managed the finances, or parts of the finances. I understand local government and the burdens there, but we had taxing authority. Is it rational in a society, particularly with the higher interest rates, for us to borrow and then send the money to entities with their own taxing authority? And look, I understand both on Republicans and Democrats, we despise this because there's lots of things we like. There's things I like, I've voted for years now. But I just look at the math and I keep wondering, is it both moral or rational for us to borrow money and send it to entities that have their own taxing authority? If these programs are so important, which many of them are, there is a solution. Those entities can actually produce the revenues, revenues themselves. And with that, I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Idaho seek recognition?
It's hard to get out, isn't it? I rise in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in strong opposition to this amendment, which cuts programs in this bill by an additional 16%, and not all of these programs do local governments or entities have a taxing authority to pay for them. The underlying bill provides $25.4 billion in new non-defense discretionary spending, which is $13.4 billion, or 35% below the fiscal year 2023 level. The bill also rescinds $9.4 billion in funding provided to the EPA, the Presidio Trust, and the Council of Environmental Quality through the Inflation Reduction Act. In drafting this bill, we worked really hard to rein in federal spending. One thing that all Republicans agree on is that we've got to reduce spending. The debate occurs on how much and how fast. In drafting this bill, as I said, we worked very hard to rein in federal spending while prioritizing critical needs within our reduced allocation. Unfortunately, this is kind of a sledgehammer approach. When you just want to reduce the bill across the bill by 16%, you would be reducing wildfire fighting. We've done everything we can to protect wildfire fighting, which is devastating, particularly to the west where I live. We've also done everything we can to protect Indian health services. That's something that's vital here, and we don't actually do a very good job of supporting Indian health services overall. If you look at the amount of money per patient that the VA spends and the amount that average American spends, and then how much we spend per person on Indian health service, it's about half what we spend on other health care needs. So we're trying everything we can over the years in a bipartisan way to bring up the Indian health services and improve their health. But they don't have a separate taxing authority to be able to do that. That's the federal government. So this sledgehammer approach, which would just reduce every budget in this bill by 16%, it's not mandatory spending, I think is inappropriate, and I don't think it is the proper way to go. So I would reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Actually, I think the chairman actually was generous. I think it's a lot more than a sledgehammer. This is like a small nuclear weapon. And partially that was the point. And obviously, you know, I care tremendously about IHS and have worked really hard on that. I'm just trying to work through, and I want to put this in moral paradigm. I mean, I have my 15-month-old sitting behind me, but this is no longer about the next generation. It's about your own retirement. We have a math problem. It's a brutal math problem. We borrow, one more time, every dime of discretionary. We borrow every dime of military. And now we're actually borrowing hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of what is mandatory. And some of this breaks my heart, but I don't seem to be able to communicate to my brothers and sisters how ugly the math is. One more time. As of yesterday, we were borrowing $78,000 every second. $78,000 every second. For our friends on the left, they care about this. We care about this. It's just so hard to turn off the faucet. And the very last time, and then I'm going to sit down and shut up and go away. The debt is primarily driven by demographics. It's something we don't tell honestly, but we got old. If you actually look at from today through the next 30 years, 100% of the projected debt, 75% it's Medicare, 25% if we backfill Social Security in 9 years when the trust fund's empty. Do you see any of this debate? And I know this is small compared to the scale we're borrowing, but I gotta find some way to get people to start understanding the scale of this math. Because the math always wins. Sometimes it takes a while, but the math will always win. And with that, I actually yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Idaho is recognized.
I sympathize with what the gentleman is saying. I agree with you. It is a huge problem, and it is a math problem. But you mentioned something that's really important. We used to spend about 70% of the budget on discretionary spending. That's the money we appropriate through these appropriation bills. And about 30% was spent on mandatory spending. That's been reversed, where it's about 70% mandatory spending today and only 30% in discretionary spending. 72. So we have got to address mandatory spending. That's difficult to do because anytime you say, we got to reform Social Security if we're going to save it, all of a sudden the commercial is going, oh, they're going to take away your Social Security. It is a political football that we've got to get together, both Republicans and Democrats, and address this. That's why the Speaker has said we're going to create a debt commission to look at how we can reduce this debt that we're facing. I agree with him. It is horrible what is going on. As I said earlier, the debate is not really whether to cut spending, it's how much and how fast. And as I said, this is, well, I guess you said it best, a small nuclear weapon in this, but I agree with what you're saying in general. It's how we go about it that's the challenge. So I would oppose this amendment and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. It is now in order to consider amendment number 129, printed in Part A of House Report 118-261. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 129, printed in Part A of House Report number 118-261, offered by Mr. Stauber of Minnesota.
Pursuant to House Resolution 838, the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Stauber, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Minnesota.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to offer my amendment that prohibits any funds from being used to carry out the Biden administration's NEPA Phase 1 rule. It's clear we have bipartisan consensus. Our permitting system is broken. Our permitting system is holding up projects in every district, whether it's Republican or Democrat. And NEPA deserves a lot of this blame. When NEPA was first passed in 1969, it was a 5-page bill. Over the last 50 years, it has grown out of control thanks to executive actions and activist courts. Today, NEPA is an albatross, blocking everything from highway infrastructure projects that connect communities and enable commerce to energy projects that are necessary for securing our energy independence. In 2020, the Trump administration enacted the first real NEPA reforms in a generation. It helped bring NEPA back to its original intent. Importantly, the Trump administration's reforms removed the requirement to consider, quote, cumulative impacts, end quote, that go far beyond a proposed project. This prevented opponents of important projects from abusing the NEPA process and pointing to outrageous, distant so-called cumulative impacts a project could hypothetically pose. The reforms also forced federal agencies to build consistency in permitting reviews and ensured all federal agencies follow the same standards and procedures. These reforms began to point us back in the right direction. The Biden administration's NEPA Phase 1 rule reversed the Trump-era reforms. It reinstated the cumulative impact requirements. It gave free rein back to federal agencies to put up roadblocks for projects they didn't want. The Phase 1 rule is just another part of the Biden administration's anywhere but America, any worker but American agenda. Mr. Speaker, the Biden administration's NEPA Phase 1 rule is a step in the wrong direction. It's important that we adopt my amendment and return some sanity to our broken permitting system. I urge all my colleagues to join me in supporting this amendment, and I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
I rise in opposition to this amendment, and I want to comment that my colleagues
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, sir. I rise in opposition to this amendment, and I want to comment that my colleagues across the aisle fundamentally misunderstand or intentionally misrepresent the interests of energy consumers in the United States and the interests of energy producers. NEPA is critically important to protect all Americans, but let's run through some statistics. There are currently 2,000 gigawatts of electric generation waiting to be interconnected to the queue in this country. That is more generation than we have by almost a factor of 2. Of those 2,000 gigawatts, there's 1 gigawatt of coal, 85 gigawatts of gas, and every other power plant that is trying to be interconnected to the grid is a zero-carbon source of energy. They are not presented by NEPA. Let's talk about the fossil fuel sector. Today we use about 20 million barrels of oil a day. A decade ago, you know how much oil we used in this country? About 20 million barrels a day. Today we use 40% less coal than we did 10 years ago. You know why? Because those industries cannot compete. People, given the choice, prefer cleaner, cheaper energy. The fastest growing vehicle segment is electric vehicles. The fastest growing source in the power sector is renewable energy. Energy is getting cheaper. And what is the energy industry doing in response? They are becoming exporters. The reason why the gas industry is growing, the reason why the oil industry is growing, is because they are building terminals to export overseas. And you know what's hard about that? Is that the American people don't want you to drill in their backyard. They don't want you to drill a pipeline through their neighborhood just so that you can run it to a terminal and sell it overseas at a profit. So if you are of the opinion that the American people don't have any say in how their communities look, how their natural parks look, how their natural lands look, if you are of the opinion that the profits of energy producers vastly outweighs the interests of energy consumers, vote for this amendment. But if you put energy consumers first, this is an absolute no. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair. The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I think my colleagues across the other side of the aisle don't understand this. This administration, just last month, removed NEPA for the Floyd Bennett Field to host migrants. And it was the Biden administration completely took NEPA off the table for their agenda because of the open border. And by the way, the IRA, the IIJA, and the CHIPS Act are not going to happen without permitting reforms and NEPA changes. Come hell or high water, it's not going to happen without the changes. And I think both sides of the aisle understand that and agree with it. We have the highest standards of living in the world because of our process. This administration continues to put up roadblocks for energy transmission, distribution, generation, mining projects, nuclear projects, road construction projects, dams, forest management. Everything that the American people want to do in a reasonable fashion is held up, in part because of NEPA. This is a very good amendment, and I urge adoption.
Does the gentleman reserve? The gentleman has the only time remaining. You're recognized.
I'm prepared to close. Mr. Speaker, we can agree that our permitting process is broken. In the debt ceiling, we got a couple of permitting concerns addressed that were generational, haven't been done in 40 years. We want to be able to make sure that the American worker, the American manufacturer, the American technology, our natural resources in our country can be used responsibly. Why are we putting agreements together with the Congo to mine our minerals that we have, for instance, in northern Minnesota, the biggest copper nickel find in the world? Why are we doing that? Why is this administration stopping the American worker, stopping the creativity that we have, stopping our not only energy independence, but our national security by going to our adversaries and asking them for our critical minerals or asking them for their energy? We can do better. And I yield.
Its time has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Minnesota. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. It is now in order to consider amendment number 130, printed in Part A of House Report 118-261. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 130, printed in Part A of House Report number 118-261, offered by Mr. Stauber of Minnesota.
Pursuant to House Resolution 838, the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Stauber, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Minnesota.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to offer my amendment that prohibits any funds from being used to finalize or otherwise carry out the Biden administration's proposed NEPA Phase 2 rule. Rather than working to fix our broken permitting system and working to address the incredible challenges and barriers NEPA poses, the Biden administration's proposed rules makes our already broken system even worse. This proposed rule expands broken NEPA framework, adds additional requirements, and creates new tools for opponents to shut down good projects. The NEPA Phase 2 rule would require federal agencies not only to consider climate change, but also add a new requirement to consider environmental justice during the NEPA review process, including environmental tree justice and tree equity. These new requirements are just another way that opponents of highway infrastructure projects, water infrastructure projects, critical mineral mining projects, renewable energy projects, transmission projects, oil and gas development projects to get to a no. This administration does not want to do it here in the United States of America. Additionally, the NEPA Phase 2 rule violates the reforms Congress has put forth to address our permitting woes. These reforms were part of the bipartisan Fiscal Responsibility Act that we passed earlier this year. Trust me, the permitting provisions in the debt ceiling agreement did not solve all of our permitting problems, but they were an important step in the right direction. For example, it included strict page limits and review deadlines for environmental assessment or an environmental impact statement. Does the NEPA Phase 2 rule implement these reforms? Absolutely not. This administration is not following the laws that Congress put forward. In fact, when CEQ Chair Brenda Mallory the Biden administration's task with fixing NEPA and our broken permitting system, testified before the Natural Resources Committee in June. She claimed the administration didn't need to change a thing. She told Congress that this administration would just follow and do business as usual. She falsely claimed that this administration was already doing everything the debt ceiling agreement instructed it to do, and that is absolutely not true. The NEPA Phase 2 rule is a blatant show of disregard for congressional intent and the law that this body passed and President Biden signed into law. The NEPA Phase 2 rule is completely misguided. It's a step in the wrong direction, and it's important we vote today to prevent the administration from moving to finalize the rule. I urge all my colleagues to support this amendment, and I reserve.
Reserves. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Maine seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to claim time in opposition.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We oppose this amendment, and I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized.
Thank you very much. What this amendment does, it allows American energy, American prosperity, American technology, and the American workers to provide energy and critical minerals and transmission projects, highway and bridge projects, dams and rivers. This allows us to do it here. This allows our communities to have a voice in what happens, not a federal three-letter agency bureaucrats telling the American people what they need and what's best in their communities. Because you know what? Our local elected officials know better than Washington, D.C. and the bureaucrats. These three-letter agencies are out of control. They're unelected. They're not accountable to anybody. And this administration is not following the laws that this body passed. For years and years, administrations haven't followed what Congress and the Senate has put forward. It's about time we do that, and it can start today. I urge adoption of my amendment, and I yield.
The gentleman yields back. The question on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Minnesota. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Minnesota. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. It is now in order to consider amendment number 131, printed in Part A of House Report 118-261. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 131, printed in Part A of House Report number 118-261, offered by Mr. Westerman of Arkansas.
Pursuant to House Resolution 838, the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Westerman, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arkansas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield myself such time as I may consume. And I want to again commend my colleague from Idaho, Mr. Simpson, for the great work that he and his committee did in giving us this appropriation bill, and also commend the minority and everyone who spent so much time on the floor working through these amendments. And I'm sure everybody will be glad to know this is the last one. It's a great one, and I hope everybody will support my amendment. I obviously support my amendment, which prohibits funds from being used to implement the Biden administration's ocean justice strategy, which undermines the intent of the Ocean Policy Committee by forcing so-called environmental justice principles into the federal government's role in ocean economic activities. In 2018, then President Trump signed Executive Order 13840, which established the Ocean Policy Committee. The Ocean Policy Committee, co-chaired by CEQ and the Office of Science and Technology Policy, was created to focus on growing the ocean economy, prioritizing scientific research, coordinating resources and data sharing, and engaging with stakeholders. The committee was codified into law through the National Defense Authorization Act of FY 2021. The Ocean Policy Committee should be working on important issues such as leveraging resources and expertise to maximize the effectiveness of federal investments in ocean research. Unfortunately, this administration has chosen to advance a misguided agenda that is not focused on the founding tenets of the Ocean Policy Committee to grow the ocean economy. Instead, it is pushing concepts like the Ocean Justice Strategy, which forces environmental justice principles into the federal government's ocean activities. Ocean justice or environmental justice should not be used to hijack legitimate work that benefits the American people. It cannot and should not become a driving force and detrimental tool to impede our federal resources management. For those reasons, I support and urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this amendment, and I reserve.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Maine seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I claim time in opposition.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you very much. As far as I can tell, this is just another attack on environmental justice and another way to go out at it. The Council on Environmental Quality is coordinating the development of an ocean justice strategy that will propose equitable and just practices to advance safety, health, and prosperity for communities residing near the ocean, the coasts, and the Great Lakes. So this amendment seeks to block that strategy. Coastlines are home to approximately 40% of the United States population. Unfortunately, coastal communities do not share equitably in the benefits provided by the ocean or equitably bear the burden of the negative impacts of human activities associated with the ocean, such as climate change, coastal flooding, and other threats. Environmental justice ensures that all Americans receive the same degree of protection from environmental and health hazards. This amendment is just another way to attack minority groups at all costs and return the United States to a time when environmental discrimination was the norm. I oppose the amendment, and I reserve.
Gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Mr. Chair, the Ocean Policy Committee should focus on addressing the issues that it was actually created to address, most importantly, streamlining federal coordination. This administration's push of this ocean justice strategy is just another example of unchecked bureaucrats forcing their agenda on Americans and increasing red tape. My amendment stops them from moving forward. Our ocean economy is as diverse as the ocean itself, and there is no one-size-fits-all approach to managing it. It's the problem we have with federal programs is they take a different course from how Congress intended for them to go. This isn't cutting funds from the Ocean Policy Committee. It's just forcing the Ocean Policy Committee to do the job that they were established to do without adding unnecessary burdens to their work. Again, I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting the amendment, and I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentlewoman from Maine is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, I'm kind of caught in this challenge of not understanding exactly what it is that my colleagues don't like about the term environmental justice, or in this case, ocean justice. It seems like justice is a word that we're very comfortable with in a patriotic way, that everyone understands justice is important in this country. And I would say, as a member who I believe represents as much coastline as anybody in here, a very coastal state that is extremely impacted by the challenges that are going on in the ocean, sea level rise, extreme storms, and has to deal with these questions, I think it's totally appropriate to have a justice strategy in making sure that we have equitability in how we take care of people. If you live in a community where it is under-resourced and you're impacted by these ocean storms that come at us with total surprise, it could be a winter storm, a November storm, a nor'easter as we call them, or a hurricane in the southern part of the country, and there aren't resources to rebuild. Perhaps sea level rising is making it so that your community needs to be moved. I was talking last night about the 31 native communities in Alaska that have to be moved because of sea level rise. Well, if you don't have a justice lens, somebody might turn around and just say, I'm sorry, this community isn't valuable enough. You don't have the resources. Your people can't move their own homes. You can't deal with rebuilding the coastal protections, so the money is going somewhere else, to a wealthier community, to some place where we think people matter more. Those decisions are critical decisions about how we spend our federal funds, about how we make sure the work we do is equitable. And climate change is having a huge impact on life on the ocean. I do not want to criticize my colleague. I'm sure he's put this forward in good faith, but the last I saw, Arkansas doesn't have an ocean. And you're trying to make policy for those of us who represent ocean communities in the East, west, south, throughout this country, the 40% of the United States population that lives on the ocean, and these are critical strategies for us. We don't need to make the same mistakes that we made in the past with not having a lens of environmental justice. Why in the world we want to turn back and have discrimination and make bad policy? Why in the world, when we're facing some of the most severe crises we've ever seen, hurricanes that come on us with no warning, extreme storms in the winter, extreme storms at times of year we never expected them. I can go on for much more time than I have to tell you about what has happened in my own state and the challenges people are worried about sea level rise, about the ocean impact of storms. And this would take away the opportunity to look forward on that and make sure that our funding is equitable, that all communities are taken care of, that all parts of the country, particularly those rural areas that probably he represents and I represent that are often under-resourced, are thought about as well. So yet again, this is a misguided amendment. People are going after a kind of language that either they just don't want to say or somehow don't believe in, or want to bring us back to a time when we just had discrimination in our federal policy and how we spent our federal funds. So it's a misguided amendment. It's a bad idea. I oppose it, and I yield back.
It's back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arkansas. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments printed in Part A of House Report 118-261, on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. Amendment 120 by Mr. Ogles of Tennessee, Amendment 126 by Mr. Roy of Texas, and Amendment 127 by Mr. Roy of Texas. The chair will reduce to 2 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote after the first vote in this series. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on Amendment number 120, printed in Part A of House Report 118-261 by the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Ogles, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 120, printed in Part A of House Report number 118-261, offered by Mr. Ogles of Tennessee.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of a request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A request for a recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. I don't see a sufficient number. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 214, the nays are 204. The amendment is adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 126, printed in Part A of House Report 118261 by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 126, printed in Part A of House Report number 118-261, offered by Mr. Roy of Texas.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote. this vote, the yeas are 212, the nays are 204. The amendment is adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on amendment number 127, printed in Part A of House Report 118261 by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy, on which further proceedings were postponed, on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 127, printed in Part A of House Report number 118-261, offered by Mr. Roy of Texas.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
The nays are 207. The amendment is adopted. There being no further amendment pursuant to the rule, the committee rises. I read it back down there.
So you're going to say, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair.
The Committee of the Whole House and the State of the Union has had under consideration H.R. 4821 and pursuant to House Resolution 838. I report the 611 back to the House with sundry amendments adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Whatever that is.
Whole thing? The chair of the Committee of the Whole House and the State of the Union reports that the committee has under consideration the bill H.R. 4821 and pursuant to House Resolution 838 reports the bill back to the House with sundry amendments adopted in the Committee of the Whole House. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. Is a separate vote demanded on any amendment reported from the Committee of the Whole? If not, the chair will put them on gross. The question is on the adoption of the amendments. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendments are agreed to. The question is on engrossment and the third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
Making appropriations for the Department of the Interior, Environment, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2024, and for other purposes.
The House will be in order. The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Mexico seek recognition?
From New Mexico, Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
The clerk will report the motion.
Ms. Ledger Fernandez of New Mexico moves to recommit the bill H.R. 4821 to the Committee on Appropriations.
Pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 19, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion to recommit. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The noes have it. The motion is not adopted.
Speaker.
The gentlewoman from New Mexico is recognized.
From New Mexico, Mr. Speaker, I ask for the yeas and the nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 5-minute vote on the motion to recommit will be followed by a 5-minute vote on the passage of the bill and the motion to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3774. On this vote, the ayes are 201 and the nays are 215. The motion is not adopted. The question is on passage of the bill pursuant to Clause 10 of Rule 20. The yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 213 and the nays are 203. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from New York, Mr. Lawler, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 3774 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title.
H.R. 3774, a bill to impose additional sanctions with respect to importation or facilitation of the importation of petroleum products from Iran and for other purposes.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 342, the nays are 69, 2/3 being in the affirmative. The rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Idaho seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the clerk be authorized to make technical corrections in the engrossment of H.R. 4821 to include corrections in spelling, punctuation, section numbering, and cross-referencing, and the insertion of appropriate headings.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Idaho seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourned today, it adjourn to meet on Monday next, when it shall convene at noon for morning hour debate and 2 p.m. for legislative business.
Without objection. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The chair will now entertain requests for 1-minute speeches. Where is he? For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition?
I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for allowing me to be here, Mr. Speaker. I rise to honor the life of my dear friend John Lyle II, who passed away on October 21st at the age of 76. The word lobbyist is an ugly word to some people, but as I've often said, you're either at the table or you're on the dadgum menu. John was one of the best of these. He always represented his clients tenaciously, and he was always kind to me, and he never misled me on any issues. John knew my dad at the University of Tennessee. My dad was the Dean of Student Conduct, and John was a member of the Phi Sigma Kappa fraternity. And when Daddy entered his fraternity house one night after a late night of parties, there was an empty bottle of Jack Daniels on the banister. And John was at the top of the stairs, and he yelled down at my dad. He said, "Hey, mister, I don't know who you are, but we don't allow alcohol at this frat house." Of course, Daddy was getting ready to shut the whole place down, and he laughed, and he looked at John and said, "You're either the dumbest or the smartest," and I'll leave the adjective out because we are on the House floor. And John was just that kind of guy. He was honorably discharged from the 134th Air Refueling Wing of the Tennessee Air National Guard at the rank of Staff Sergeant in 1973. And I was proud to call him my friend, and I still am. John Lyle II is survived by his wife Marilyn, his children Chris and John III, his sister Jane Ann, and their 3 grandchildren, Mr. Speaker. He won't be forgotten for the folks who had the privilege of knowing him, and I will truly miss him and his friendship. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
Who's the member from Pennsylvania?
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to celebrate and honor the loss of a public servant, first responder, and beloved member of my Western Pennsylvania community, Anthony Tonacuda. Chief of Foxwell Emergency Medical Services since August 2020, Chief Cuda was a titan in the EMS scene. He joined the Swissvale Fire Department at 16, became a paramedic by 18, and worked as a first responder for Seneca area EMS in Wilkinsburg, Monroeville, Penn Hills, and other parts of Western Pennsylvania. Through the dark days of the COVID-19 pandemic, Chief Cuda led his crew with generosity, honesty, and courageous conviction. Chief Cuda saved lives. He comforted frightened community members and taught the next generation of first responders. He was a witty straight shooter who, off the job, enjoyed playing Dungeons and Dragons, spending time with family, whether at home, at Kennywood, the Renaissance Festival, or Comic-Con. To the Kuda family, especially his wife, Michelle, his 5 children, Zachary, Morgan, Shannon, Caitlin, and Kristen, know this: our corner of Western Pennsylvania is better off thanks to Chief Kuda, and mourns his passing, as does this body and this country. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The House will be in order. Members and staff will take their conversations off the floor. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
With consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to congratulate My FM WCRE 93.9 in Chesterfield County, which celebrated its 70th anniversary this year. WCRE has brought news, entertainment, and sports to the people of Chesterfield County for over 70 years, from broadcasting information through Hurricane Hugo in 1989 to allowing the Cheraw Police Department to use their radio signals following a devastating tornado at the Cheraw Primary School in 2004. WCRE has played a key role in making sure that the people of the PD and Chesterfield County are always informed during times of crisis. Their success goes beyond serving in the South Carolina 7th. They have been named South Carolina's Radio Station of the Year in 2003 and 2007. Thank you, WCRE, for your commitment to our community. I wish you many more years of great success. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and with that, I yield my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to discuss the Israel Security Supplemental Appropriation Act and how Republicans continue to put politics over people. Financial support for Israel after a terrorist attack should be an easy bipartisan bill to pass. Instead, Republicans are hijacking it to prevent the richest 1% of Americans from paying their fair share of taxes and preventing life-saving aid for families caught in the crossfire. So Republicans would rather protect their billionaire tax-cheating supporters than protect children. No one should be surprised about it. If the richest 1% paid their fair share, America could gain $3 trillion in the next 10 years, according to economists. Even a portion of that funding would allow us to support Israel, help Palestinian families, and aid Ukraine, and even reduce the national debt significantly. But yet, Republicans want to rob the poor to pay the rich. And I hope American voters are paying attention. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
I seek to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor the heroic and selfless actions of Buffalo Police Detective A.J. Ortiz. On the evening of August 29th, Detective Ortiz was off duty and traveling in my district in the town of Concord when he noticed taillights partially submerged in a pond. Without hesitation, he rescued the 3 elderly individuals who were trapped inside a sinking vehicle, saving their lives. In that moment, Detective Ortiz went above and beyond the call of duty. But I want to emphasize that his heroism goes beyond just this single act. As the second in command of the Buffalo Police Underwater Recovery Team, he's demonstrated his dedication to public safety and extraordinary commitment to our community. His training and experience undoubtedly played a vital, pivotal role in the positive outcome that would and could have quickly become a tragic situation. Thank you, Detective A.J. Ortiz, for your heroic actions that night and your continued dedication to serving Western New York every single day. And, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Speaker, ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to commend and congratulate the Texas Rangers on their historic first World Series championship. They brought the trophy home to Arlington, Texas, and the Rangers managed to overcome a 6-year playoff drought and 2 prior World Series losses to bring the trophy home. They have a great front office, a great manager, a great owner that put together the winning combinations that allowed them to be able to hoist the Commissioner's Trophy this week and also set records, had the most RBIs and doubles in a single postseason game. They had to overcome a lot. They had injuries. They lost their last regular season game. They had a commentator in the booth that seemed to be rooting against them, but they stayed focused, and it helped the Rangers cement the Dallas-Fort Worth-Arlington area as one of the few regions in the United States where all 4 major sports franchises have won a championship. And from their humble beginnings through heartbreak and defeat to the World Series champions, the Rangers have brought joy to everyone in the Dallas-Fort Worth-Arlington area. Congratulations again, Texas Rangers, 2023 World Series champions.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
I rise today to honor the life of the general of IU basketball, the legendary Coach Bob Knight. Growing up in southern Indiana, there were 3 things that shaped my childhood: family, faith, and IU basketball. Any game day, TVs across our towns would play the game, and on the screen was Coach Bob Knight. During those games, my mom really only had 2 emotions: frustration, yelling, "Come on, boys," or elation, celebrating gameplay. I was a student during Coach Knight's last year at IU, and I always said you haven't really seen an IU game unless you were able to witness one that he coached or one that he'd been kicked out of. Coach Knight's legacy was complex, to say the least, but that didn't stop Hoosiers from loving him and through him the game of basketball. And he created champions on and off the court. He brought home 3 national championship banners to the walls of Assembly Hall and 902 wins, more than any other coach in IU history. Under Coach Knight, IU basketball wasn't just a sport about wins and championships, it was a way of life. And in his honor today, we remember what it means to be an IU Hoosier. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Hawaii seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to celebrate the life of one of my favorite Republicans and former colleague, the late Hawaii State Senator Sam Sloan. There is much to be said about the boy from Allentown, Pennsylvania, who found his way to Hawaii in the 60s and made our islands his home. For 20 years, Sam represented East Honolulu's 9th Senatorial District, and for almost half that time, he was the sole Republican member of the Hawaii Senate. He read every bill, every resolution, and defied time and space to try and attend every committee meeting and vote, earning the self-imposed nickname, the Lone Ranger. I had the honor and privilege of serving alongside Sam. Yes, we disagreed on many things, but more than not, we saw eye to eye, especially when it came to lowering costs for working families and being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. Sam was a statesman till the very end, and given the partisan times we find ourselves in, I truly miss my friend. Mahalo, Sam, for your service and for your friendship. As the Lone Ranger, you challenged our minds and you won our hearts. I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize Travis Crate for being named the 2023 Harbor Freight Tolls for Schools Prize for Teaching Excellence. Mr. Crate is one of 25 public high school skilled trade teachers across the country to receive this award. He has been a welding instructor at Venango Technology Center for more than 25 years. This prize was created to recognize high school skilled trade teachers for their work to inspire the next generation. Mr. Crate's welding program is dynamic and collaborative, incorporating industry-based skills to prepare students for life beyond high school. As students progress through the Crate's program, they have the opportunity to mentor first-year students, providing one-on-one instruction that reinforces their learning and helps beginner students grasp welding more easily. Mr. Speaker, as co-chair of the Bipartisan Career and Technical Education Caucus, I applaud the work of Mr. Crate and other CTE teachers who continue to help students find their passions. Congratulations, Mr. Crate, on this remarkable recognition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
The 12th Congressional District is celebrating. We're celebrating the grand opening of Covenant Community Care, an essential health clinic on Joy Road in Detroit. For 8 years, Covenant Community Care operated a small health care clinic, limiting very much their ability to provide and serve the most vulnerable. However, my team and I worked incredibly hard and successfully obtained community project funding of $500,000 to expand to a 10,000 square foot health center, tripling healthcare services for our community. The facility will serve 10,000 patients and offer primary care like medical, dental, and behavioral health services. I saw it myself. It's incredible. This increases healthcare access to people living in that part of Detroit that is right now designated by the Health Resources and Services Administration as, quote, health professional shortage area and medically underserved area. So I'm incredibly, again, proud and congratulate our CEO there, Jocelyn Pedway, and the Covenant Community Care staff for their ongoing partnership to serve and care for our communities and our residents. I yield.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Virginia seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to commend the Virginia Beach lifeguards on a successful summer season and to thank them for keeping our beaches and Hampton Roads safe. Lifeguards are an essential part of any community. Back home in Virginia's 2nd District, the Virginia Beach Life Saving Service has protected our oceanfront since 1930. Their mission of promoting beach safety protects not only the citizens of Virginia Beach, but the millions of visitors we have each year. Lifeguarding is one of the top choices for people searching for summer jobs, including my 2 sons. And while it is a rewarding job, it's also a challenging one that demands personal responsibility. Beaches and oceans are dynamic natural environments. Crowd conditions, currents, waves, sharks, and other weather conditions can rapidly change, putting swimmers in grave danger. The average number of people saved each summer is between 400 to 600, but during this year's summer season, which extended from May 13th to September 17th, the Virginia Beach Life Saving Service performed more than 800 rescues on the beaches they patrol. On behalf of a grateful community, I want to thank our lifeguards for the level of skill they bring to this job and what they do for Virginia Beach and Hampton Roads. Congratulations to the Virginia Beach Life Saving Service on a successful summer season. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks and address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, they say that everything is bigger in Texas, and that includes our pride for our very first World Series win. Yes, I also rise to celebrate the World Series champions, the Texas Rangers. On Wednesday, the Rangers clinched their first World Series win against the Arizona Diamondbacks. I don't mean to rub it in the face of my colleagues from the Grand Canyon State, but we warned you. We could and we would come and take it. This week, our Rangers went and took it. I was lucky enough to represent North Texas as the first Black Democratic woman to play in the congressional baseball game this year. While I may not have the arm of Josh Spores or the speed of 2-time MVP Corey Seager, you best believe our Rangers have inspired me to score some runs next year. While this may be our first World Series win, mark my words, it will not be our last. And with that, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
Make an unanimous request to speak for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Well, we've had an active 2 weeks in which we've been passing appropriation bills, and that the Speaker should be commended on that. Unfortunately, all the activity with regard to the new Speaker and appropriation bills has caused the press to have an excuse not to pay attention to what's going on at the border. In recently released figures with regard to September, one more time we see record numbers of people coming across our southern border. Compared to a year ago, the number of what we call gotaways, which I think is the most dangerous of the immigrant groups, that is shot up from 58% to 69%. Almost a 20% increase over last year's already high figure, and last year they shot up to 49%. I think as well, not only do we have a huge problem with people coming across the border that shouldn't be coming across, but we should also be paying attention to the viewpoint of the people coming across. John Adams warned that our Constitution was fit for a moral, religious people and totally unfit for any other kind. We have got to, particularly as the United States has to take sides around the world in conflicts, we should be paying particular attention to how our new wave of immigrants thinks. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Oregon seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize my friend, colleague, and fellow Oregonian, Congressman Earl Blumenauer. Throughout his 50 years of public service, Earl has always been a consistent and vocal advocate for Oregon values. He helped pioneer the fight against climate change long before others were doing the same. And his commitment to building healthy communities and a healthy planet through public transit and cycling was unmatched. In fact, he wore it proudly every day in the form of that iconic bicycle pin on his lapel. I know I speak for the entire Oregon delegation when I say that Earl will be sorely missed in Congress, but he leaves behind a legacy of service and dedication to making life better for working families, not only in our state, but across our great country. I wish him and his family all the best in his new chapter, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Oregon seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
The question is on the motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until noon on Monday next for morning hour debate.